You're listening to the Microsoft Innovation Podcast, where we explore the intersection of people, business, and technology. This year, we're adding a new show to our lineup, The AI Advantage, to help you learn the skills you need to thrive in the AI era.
Welcome to the Copilot Show, where I interview Microsoft staff innovating with AI. I hope you will find this podcast educational and inspire you to do more with this great technology. Now, let's get on with the show. In this episode, we'll be focusing on the Business Value Kit. Today's guest is from Cambridge in the United Kingdom. He works at Microsoft as a principal program manager for the customer advisory team, or PowerCat. It's known. You can find links to his bio and socials in the show notes for this episode. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thanks very much, Mark. How you doing?
Good to have you on the show. I've been waiting probably about 6 months to get this one recorded because the Business Value Kit, that the PowerCat team and you're the lead on it has produced is a very exciting piece of tooling that allows customers to really understand the value that they get from anything from automating an idea to building an app to, what is the actual incremental value that has been achieved on their own data sets. But before we go there, tell us a bit about food, family, and fun. What do they mean to you?
Oh, wow. So food and fun are pretty closely related, so I'll take those at the same time. So for fun, I roast my own coffee, and I've been doing that since COVID, since we all got locked down. It became my COVID hobby, so I've still maintained that. So I roast my own coffee. Family, I've got two young children. Ria, my wife, we all live in Cambridge in England. So
nice. Now, roasting your own coffee, does that mean that you have a full-on coffee roaster?
Shed.
Or I noticed it recently because you do have that?
Yeah. I've got my own roaster. I've got my own shed, logo, bagging machine. I've gone very deep down that rabbit hole.
Wow, that's so cool. Like I'm growing coffee beans.
Oh, wow.
On my property. Yeah, because I'm in a subtropical type climate and I want to see, if I can get any success there because I'm a big coffee drinker. I order in, I'm on a subscription service where I have my beans roasted and sent to me.
Oh, wow. That's serious.
And because I live so remote from town, it's, one of life's guilty pleasures, if you like, to always have a great coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
And I generally start my day with just a black coffee. So therefore, the beans are really got to stand up, right, when you're not injecting any sugar, any milk or anything else into the mix. It's just that standalone. And I actually had a coffee company for a while. I got into the whole cold drip, single origin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Goodness me.
So I identify with your passion for it.
Yeah. We need to talk after this.
Nice. And so are you selling it?
No, I did. I did for a while just to raise money for my kids' school, but it was more or less a second full-time job. So I kind of toned it down a bit. So it's just myself now.
Wow. When you order a bag of the beans in, which are, green, at what size are those bags?
I'm quite lucky. I found some suppliers where I can buy like a kilo at a time.
Ooh.
You can buy half of the cost of what you buy it for in the shop, and plus you get to roast it yourself. So, but when I first started, it was harder to get small quantities. I have to buy like 10 to 20 kilos at a time, which that's quite a commitment.
It's massive, right?
My coffee intake went up pretty substantially.
Yeah. I've been marketed to recently on Instagram where somebody has created a coffee roaster that's designed to be worked over a gas hob and it has a temperature probe in it. And you could only, I suppose, roast, let's say 250 grams to maybe 500 grams at a time in it. And it's just interesting that there's obviously a lot more people want to take it right from the bean and create their own roast and then just personally use it.
Yeah, it's becoming more of a thing, I guess.
Yeah. Awesome. Tell us about your career journey into Microsoft.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I started working in IT, I don't know, about 1996, so I'm pretty old, been doing IT for a long time. And I joined Microsoft 14 years ago, and the CAT team probably about 3 years ago, coming up for 3 years ago now. So yeah, I've been all over the show, hardware and software and developer and all sorts.
So how long have you been just in the Power Platform space?
Since about 2016.
Gotcha.
So when it was
birthed.
pretty much, yeah. I was lucky. I was in the right place at the right time to be working with a UK company that were just going all in. They saw the potential for it. And even despite the lack of governance features and administration features back in those days, and even connectors, they still went for it. So yeah, it's good.
So good.
It's been quite a journey.
It's interesting because, 2016 was really where that kind of transition happened from Dynamics, 365 solution, and ultimately what we now call Dataverse being separated out from the core and building what we have today. And that's 9 years, isn't it? 9 years ago.
I know.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. It still feels really new, I guess, because of the constant change to the platform.
So the reason for the podcast today is the business value kit. Can you tell me, what is it, first of all, before we unpack the origin of it?
Yeah, sure. It's a solution that comes with a number of kind of tools to help you develop your own framework to measuring value at scale. So whether that's your COE-led value kind of framework where you have administrators choosing the apps that they want to evaluate, or whether you just let your makers, assess their own apps and flows. Now, I won't get into the origins of it just yet, but in the process of building it, we found there needs to be a pretty tailorable or flexible approach to assessing value. And that's kind of what we tried to start building into this kit. So it's a new thing for the CAT team. It's a new thing for us. It's a new thing for everyone, really. And we'll get more into that in a bit, but it's really the first step in a way to automate value assessment at scale, because many of the customers that we're working with have thousands of apps, which is to do as manual.
Yeah. And that's interesting, value assessment at scale, because what I find is that a lot of enterprise accounts, many apps get implemented. I've seen situations where well over 20,000 apps are implemented in large-scale automation. And then whoever's responsible for that piece of tech in the organization needs to go to the executive and ask for more funding to do more, build more. And a typical executive is always going to want to know, what's the value? As in, what's the impact? Has it saved our employees time? What's the culture around it? What's the, if we're spending X on software, are we getting a Y ROI, right, from that? Mm-hmm. And I find oftentimes folks in these positions don't have the data to back up what that, as in particularly the financial data, to back up and have that executive-based conversation inside their organization. And of course, last year we had the refresh of the total cost of ownership from Forrester, which is a brilliant, insight into the payback time on the investment in the technology. And of course, it's taking a range of companies as part of that. But what I like about this, and what really resonated with me when I first saw it, was it allows me to use my data, my organization data, the apps, the automations, the chatbots, the Power Pages environments, etc., that I'm running, and really quantify value, not from a case study like what you get with a Forrester report, but really, what does it mean to me?
Yeah.
And that's where I was like, wow, this is going to give a tool set for those different, often IT departments, to really come up with justification for investment from the business and from their executive layer. Is that how you saw it?
In short, yes. But it took me a while to get there, because one of the things that we found, or that I found when putting this together, it was kind of like it came up. So I started working with a customer who had, they'd been using the Power Platform for a couple of years. They had made an investment and they were looking for return on investment. That was the first thing they said to me. How do I prove that we're developing anything of any use? Really good numbers, a few thousand apps, a few thousand flows, really good active usage, very active community. So, all of those kind of checkboxes were ticked and everything was moving in the right direction. But that was their first question, was how do we go back to people and say what we're getting out of this? And that was really difficult. So I spoke to nearly 20 customers with the same question, like, how do you assess value? And basically nobody was. So I then made a really big problem for myself, because they were all asking the same question during that interview. How do other customers do it? So now I from one customer to over 20 that all had slightly different reasons for wanting to know it. Some of them were based around their investment. Others were more governance led. So they were thinking, if we've got really valuable apps and flows out there that we don't know about, then that's an increase in risk for us. And that became the start of it, really, was to figure out how do we do it. So I'm in a very kind of privileged position to be able to sort of sit on the shoulders of other people. We have a team. I need to mention our business value assessment team. So people like Robert, Fran, and John, and they specialize in helping customers understand the value of the Power Platform. Now, for me to do that, I kind of needed to understand value a little bit more deeply. I was much like any person thinking it's just time or money. Right?
Yeah.
If it's something you're automating, it's just saving you time. And, it's way more than that. I learned that over the course of putting this kit together, that value is perceived very, very differently inside an organization. If you talk to somebody in finance about what does a valuable Power App look like, you're going to get something that's very different to someone in sales or research or whatever the other. So it's very diverse, not just at the business unit or department level, but even at the personal level. And that made the problem a lot harder to try and figure out because, time and money is great. That's not the full picture. It's not the full true story of value. And so I sat in with some interviews with our BVA team and just really liked the way that they teased out the value from talking to a citizen developer, just asking them to share what was the problem that you had, why did you even need to build an app and what was the cost of doing nothing, right? So straight away, they're starting to get to this kind of real empathetic kind of connection. And then, they take the conversation into talking about what they built, just to let them, really show off. It's a real, many people, especially outside of IT, when people build really impactful and cool apps, they love, it's great to see stories like that. And that kind of flow or process kind of, to me, was like, well, that's how we can get the true value out of somebody, that personal value at least. But how do we demonstrate that in a way that's, one, eventually going to be tangible, and secondly, going to be most impactful? Now, where I settled with that was, well, organizations have objectives and goals, right? Departments have objectives and goals, things that they're trying to achieve. And if we can try and align the story with the objectives and goals of the organization, just the entire organization, well, then we're going to get a much broader picture over the true value of this thing. It's having a tangible impact against objectives and goals within inside the organization. And that was kind of like the key, like almost design principle of the whole kit was, make sure that the value that we can extract from the story is aligned to the objectives of the organization. And so that was the approach. That's the mechanism to actually get to value, at least for now. And, by having a kit and automation helps customers with, like you mentioned, Mark, your customers, 20, 30,000 apps. Where do you even start? You've got the Series Starter Kit and the Admin Center, where you can see all these great dashboards around apps that are being used and, broadly shared and used, but you don't understand the value of those things. So that was the big challenge for customers. We don't know where to start. We need something that's automated, and we don't have the skills because, assessing value is actually something that's really quite difficult to do. So that's the backstory to it.
So you've raised a lot of interesting things because, when we talk about ROI, return on investment, we talk about things like time and money, right? Saved. And it's interesting that you've brought up the story factor. So inside the tool, is there ability to capture that story, almost the, what was the problem? That's why I built the solution. This is the outcome. Is that part of what the tool is doing? And then is that auto-triggered? How else are you capturing value within the organization?
Dynamics Minds is one event you don't want to miss. Microsoft product managers and industry leaders from all over the world converge in Slovenia to explore the latest in Dynamics 365, the Power Platform, and Copilot. Expect 3 days of in-person community connection, trailblazing insights, and a location sure to inspire our creativity. Early bird tickets are on sale now, and podcast listeners get 10% off by registering via the link in the show notes. Hope to see you there.
So that's the main way that it actually operates is There are two ways you can start an assessment. One is you own an app. There's a Canvas app in the solution and business value toolkit solution. That when you launch it, it gives you a list of all the apps that you own, and you can select an app and go through the assessment process. That's if you want to. Or administrators can choose an app from their dashboard, just copying the ID of the app in the environment, run a flow, and it will send the app owner an adaptive card saying, great job, we want you to come and do this assessment. And that's exactly what we do then, Marcus. We capture the challenges, what was it, the problems you were facing or the idea that you had? What did you build? What were the challenges that you had? Because at the same time, we need to collect as much information as we can to do the assessment, but at the same time, we're also trying to tell your story, because capturing the data is only half of the picture. We still need to figure out how we're going to communicate that inside your organization. And so we let you kind of do that through this 5-step storytelling framework almost. And then we use generative AI in the background to kind of restructure it. So if you've ever read like a case study, one of Microsoft's case studies, almost like a James Bond film, really. They're very predictable in the way that they're kind of structured. And so we use prompts to restructure the story and kind of enhance it a little bit using that kind of approach. And then we take that version of the story and present it back to the person that shared it, just make sure that they're happy with it. And as soon as they're happy with it, we create an unpublished page on your intranet so that you can start to build up a backlog of these success stories. Because that was one of the key things. When I was talking to customers, I found kind of that the average was like the sweet spot was like 2 to 3 success stories. In some cases, that was per year. And in others, that was as many as they had. But it was always like 2 to 3. Because that's quite an undertaking, writing a story takes a certain amount of time. And so like the early feedback is the first customer that started using it, they'd gone from 3 success stories since they've been using the platform to like 1 per assessment. And they had a backlog of 30 odd at that point in time. So it's really good. That's one part of what we'll talk about communicating the value in a little while. So we take that AI generated or enhanced story, and then we use a second prompt to compare it against objectives and goals within your organization. And so we have, there's a model driven app where you enter the objectives and goals, analyze it for alignment and impact. So how closely does your story align to this objective? And if we can detect from the information that you shared, what kind of impact is it having? Is it sort of tangible or intangible, like i.e., you're saving 30 hours a week, or just so that would be tangible, or intangible would be like, staff morale improved or something. We start to try and extract as much value as we can out of that. And then we kind of present that back to the user as a list of, here's all of the different ways we think your app is having value. And at this point, you've gone from most likely having a pretty narrow problem that you were trying to solve, a narrowly scoped problem, to being presented with all of the different ways this thing could be adding value inside your organization that you probably didn't even know about. So a really good example of that shared back with customers where they've built an app in one department and without even realizing they're helping another department's objectives by being more efficient or streamlined or whatever. So like the flow is like you go through these assessments, you agree or disagree with the ones you think it sounds like it's quite plausible. I'd be happy to say that's some impact I'm having. And then we go through a value calculator, which is the final stage. So for each objective and goal, we try to get to some kind of tangible value. And a good example, one of the first customers I worked with, they had like a health and safety directorate where they had to go around all of the vehicle depots in the UK performing audits. And they were a very small team, lots of depots, and they were kind of doing it in very disparate ways. And so they built someone in the team built one out just to standardize the way that they were doing audits. That was the whole reason for this app. And what they didn't realize, because they didn't approach it the same way that maybe we would. The health and safety inspectors, not IT architects, they didn't realize that they're collecting all this really awesome information. And after a few months, they realized that they were, and then they started to, as their skills improved, they started to lay Power BI over this. And then they were able to detect, which depots were having the most kind of workplace incidents. And they were able to start building like proactive campaigns and all of this stuff just with this one app. And, that kind of story that they didn't realize the broader impact that they were having. And so, that's one of the things that we're trying to do in this tier is to give you a full idea over the impact that that's having. And the way that we got to tangible value with this example was that they saw a reduction in common workplace injuries. So we said, well, so what's the average cost to your organization if someone injures themselves? Is it like £5,000 or £50,000? And the reduction in workplace injuries times the cost of a workplace injury was the value of the app that we managed to get to. So, one example, but so we use like this concept of the average cost of something that's closely related to the objective to help you get somewhere nearer, an accurate, tangible.
That is so interesting, because that tangible value of that you're not going to capture oftentimes in an ROI calculator is it was 10 people, their cost per hour is X, and therefore we've wiped off this amount of time, and this is a reduction. What all those tools don't take into account is that we reduced workplace injury as that example, right? And the dollar value of that, or the implication, whether it's, insurance premiums or any other number of things, loss of life even, the implication is much larger than just we save somebody 5 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day or something like that, which is the more very binary way of looking at value creation.
It is. And those kinds of measures often lead into, okay, so you're saving 20 minutes a day. What are you doing with those 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Are you a longer smoke break or? And it can lead you down to a path that maybe you didn't anticipate. So for version 1 of the kit, we focused on was to try and make it give customers a way of measuring value that was very personal to their organization. And the kit does that quite nicely. It captures a lot of information in the background. And I guess that kind of leads to the next thing I want to talk about, really, which is we now have an approach, or we've given customers an approach to measuring value at scale so they can collect all of this assessment data. I guess the other part of it is communicating that. So, you've got a very broad spectrum of people that are interested in this information inside your organization. And one of the things that we're trying to kind of encourage customers to do is to think about, when you've captured the story, consider all of the different audiences that you need to communicate it to, because they're not all interested in the same level of detail. Your CTO is not going to really, they'll be happy about the success stories most likely, but they're not going to read pages and pages of success stories to get to that number. They just want a dashboard that says, this level of investment has saved this much money or whatever and to show that in a way that's aligned to the objectives that they care about, I think is far more impactful than just saying, the Power Platform has saved $2 million or whatever.
Yeah.
So one of the things we try to encourage customers to do is do a bit of audience analysis, understand who the stakeholders are, understand what information is actually important to them. You're capturing a lot with this tool. So identify which parts are, really important to them, and consider the level of detail that they're interested in. So like the app maker, I'm dead interested in knowing how many users are hitting my app per month and how long their sessions are and which buttons they're clicking. My CTO that doesn't care about that.
Yeah.
Doesn't care about how much, whatever, if there is an objective that this thing is aligned to, how is it having an impact on that? So, consider that. And one of the things I did when I was building this was, at the point in time where it generates the story, is to curate different versions of it for different channels. So like for Teams messaging or HTML newsletters or whatever, or Viva Engage announcements. Just think about all of the different ways that you can take that single story and then curate different versions for different channels. And that seems to be a good way to consider communicating that value.
One of the questions I've had about it was, is there a dependency on having the COE starter kit or the COE kit installed before you can actually use this?
No, there is. We kept it kind of decoupled intentionally, purely because it does serve a very niche purpose. It's not something that every customer wants to really get involved in. So it's a standalone solution. However, we've had that have connected it up to the app table, for example, in the COE starter kit, just to make the process of servicing apps that people own a bit faster, because we're using the APIs.
And what about things like, you mentioned that if I'm the creator of the app, I want to know which buttons they're using, how they're using it, the frequency, how many people. A lot of that is telemetry-based data. Are you ingesting that as part of this?
No, we're keeping it as simple as possible. And in fact, we're trying to make it even simpler. So taking things like the app description that's generated by AI in managed environments, looking at that, is there enough information there to kind of suggest value, to at least bubble up the apps that look valuable, and then make the way that you assess these things a little bit easier and less cumbersome. So the whole point of this was really just to get something out there, see if customers like it, if they get any value from it, and see if there's any value to them.
Yeah.
And if it is, then we'll continue iterating on it and improving it. So there's lots of ideas floating around at the moment.
Well, typical role that would go and install this in an organization, is it like a business analyst type skill set that would need to get this set up and configured and ready to start becoming operational?
Not so much. I think, we've mostly worked, when we've heard from customers, it's been people that are involved in supporting the Power Platform. So admins, they're involved in setting it up. I guess the challenge is really in, collecting the objectives and goals of the organization.
Yeah.
Finding the people to talk to who know what the objectives and goals are of the various parts of the organization. And one of the things we've seen customers do quite successfully is they have like a phased rollout of this tool. So they'll pick on a department, say finance as an example.
Yes.
They'll talk about the tool to the finance team and ask them to, what are the objectives and goals of your organization, and populate the tool as they're kind of rolling out. And that seems to be quite a sweet spot for getting this thing to work.
What's the feedback you've received?
Very good. Yeah, really good. In terms of customers have gone from, I guess, scarcity to abundance in terms of success stories. They get one per assessment, which is one good thing. We've had customers that were using it from more of a governance perspective. Their feedback is now they're able to see the high risk apps that they didn't know about before. They're capturing the value data as well, which is really useful. We've had other feedback around the setup of it and some of the challenges around getting objectives and goals out of people. So we're starting to think about, is there any guidance we can provide there?
Yeah.
Which is more around that phase to kind of roll that approach. But yeah, it's been really positive. I think customers appreciate that they've got something now that goes a little bit further than just, you're saving X amount of time or money. They're able to get a much broader, downstream and upstream kind of view on value from the thing that they're looking at.
Yeah. Where can people get it and install it and whatnot?
Yeah, so you can go to the PowerCat, the COE starter kit has a GitHub repo. It's part of the core solution there, so you can just download it and you'll see Business Value Toolkit as a standalone solution file when you download it. The setup is pretty straightforward. There's just a few connector references or connections to create, and that's it. You're off to go. I guess the only thing to call out really is this is what I do hear a lot about is AI builder credits. Make sure you have some assigned to the environment that you're using it in, because otherwise you're gonna waste a lot of your own time there.
Excellent. Okay, so it's using AI Builder. Does Copilot Studio come into the mix at all?
No, not really. Not at the moment. It probably will do in the future. This was, I started building it probably summer last year, and released it just a few weeks before the conference in Las Vegas. So
yeah,
a lot's changed since then, obviously.
Yeah.
There's definite ways that we can make this. So hopefully, like in an ideal world, something that runs in the background. Yeah. That would be ideal. That would be where I'd like to get it to.
And final question I have for you is, now that customers are using it, what are they asking to be added? You talked about getting that baseline information in there to start with. What else are they asking for?
Yeah. They're asking mostly for a Power BI dashboard.
Yeah.
Now, which, like I said, when I was kind of doing some research before I really started building this thing, one of the questions I was asking customers, and I interviewed nearly 20, or 21 actually, was what does like an ideal dashboard look like? And I was hoping to get to like the 18-20% kind of, I couldn't get anywhere near it. Everybody had, the way organizations are structured. And as soon as you start to show value will be very personal, it's all about the objectives and goals of your own organization, you kind of really move away from having the opportunity to build a dashboard that's going to tick most of the boxes that people want to see ticked. So that's one thing I need to kind of think about. But that's been the biggest ask is, can we have a dashboard, please?
Awesome. Steve, before I let you go, is there anything else you want to add?
I'd say, just be aware. This is a journey, really. Measuring value is something that I guess is new to most organizations, and the idea of the kit really is to to give customers something that they can use, and ultimately, ideally, there would be no kicks. It would be in the product. So that's my kind of, that's what's in it for me, is I'd rather this was in the product than in a kit. So hopefully I can influence that somewhat. But yeah, it'll be improved and iterated on over the next few months for sure.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 guy. Is there a guest you would like to see on the show from Microsoft? Please message me on LinkedIn and I'll see what I can do. Final question for you. How will you create with Copilot today? Ka kite.
Are you ready to accelerate your career in the Microsoft ecosystem? The 90-Day Mentoring Challenge, created by Mark Smith, is your opportunity to create a personalized pathway to success. Join over 1,200 alumni from more than 70 countries who have achieved remarkable results, from promotions to new job opportunities. Take it from Nathan, who said, "Since completing the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge, I've become an MVP in business applications and doubled my income." Or from Parves, who shares, "I've never felt as inspired or energized about my career as I do now." Sign up at arcor.nz365guide.com. You can find the link in the show notes. And if you use the code podcast, you'll get 10% off.